And what I want to do is get all the tension out of the throat and just really relax when I'm doing it right. There's no tension whatsoever, and my throat is open. And it's a really, you want the sound to be as forward as possible to the front of your face as much as possible. So I'll do a couple of those and up and down the scale, like, as high as I can go and then as low as I can go. On the way to church, warming up.
How about the bubbles? You ever do the bubbles?
I do the bubbles. I love the bubbles. That's like the quick warm-up thing.
Let's do the bubbles, because I've done, that's one of the few things I'll do on the way to church to this day. And my kids will be in the back seat, and, and they just used to make fun of me, but now they just join me. They just do it with me. So it'll be like driving to church going like...
Love it. I love it. Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
And then sometimes we just start laughing our heads off, because it's funny when you do these exercises, you get like some air going, and you get almost lightheaded. If you have to pull over, just please.
Stars spinning around your head, that kind of thing. Yeah, it's good.
Well, and too, if your breath cuts off, it means you're not very warmed up yet. So I'll usually hum first to try to wake myself up, and then do the breathing. Because the bubbles will, if you don't have breath, you're not going to make bubbles.
That's
it's going to be like, you're just stop, the air stops.
So lead us in the bubble thing. Like when you say no breath, no bubbles. So
no breath. Well, you've definitely. Why don't you talk about the breath first? Because that might help with expanding your lungs to get that air ready for the bubbles.
Breathing is just so important to singing. When your breathing is off, then pretty much your voice won't operate properly. But one thing I've learned to do from vocal teachers is to, I think the muscles are called the intercostal muscles, and those are the muscles that expand your ribs. So you want your ribs out as far as they can go, and you don't want to hurt yourself, but you want them expanded before you take your breath. And you breathe in, and as you're breathing in, you want this full area, even to your back, to be full of air. So I'll do it, try to demonstrate. Ribs are out. Wait, let me say one more thing. As you're breathing in, you don't, like I just did, you don't want to make any sound, because that means there's tension in the throat. So you want to breathe in quietly. I'll do it right this time. And then breathe out, and you want the lower abdomen to kind of support the breath as you breathe out. So you breathe in. So I do that a couple of times to get my breathing in shape. Another breathing exercise I like to do is to take a big breath and let the air out as slow as possible for as long as I can. And that's a good one that helps get the breathing back in shape.
It's like you're letting the air out of a balloon.
Right.
Yeah.
And I noticed, so you're talking about the air is coming down low. It's not, you're not breathing up high.
No,
You're trying to
not
keep this
real high. You want to
remember that.
all in here.
And a good way, too, to make sure that you're letting your lungs expand is just let it all out first. So like, breathe out before you even breathe in. Just like,
That's right.
so you feel like you're almost caved in here, and then take it. So that, do you hear that? I'm hungry. If you're hungry, it will make noises. But that way you can feel it. Otherwise, if you don't let it out first, when you take it in, you might already have a lot in there, so it's not going to do much.
Be a good full breath. But before each phrase, you want to get a good, healthy breath.
And I know that sometimes our vanity, I know as I've gotten older, I'm trying to hide my gut more and more. So I have a guitar to hide, but the guitar goes like... But I think it's something, we're all taught to try to keep our gut in, and yet when we're singing, it is important, isn't it, to just forget that, and you've got to let that gut just go out and your back, right?
Freedom. It's freedom for all of you with a little gut.
Put on some sweatpants and practice this.
My voice teacher used to tell me to, make my belt get tighter, because, but I'm like, well, what about if someone's belt's already too tight? You're not going to know if you're taking more breath in or not.
You can put an eye out with some in the button shoots.
Pop a button.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's good. So the breath thing, which leads to bubbles, and that's one of the things you do. You want to kind of lead us in a bubble exercise?
Sure. Let's do that.
And you do this on the way to church? What is your preparation? On the way to church, or do you actually do this behind the stage with your
I do
whole
some.
team?
Actually, the guys that I travel with, my band, they've gotten used to kind of probably like your kids. They just do it with me, or they make fun, but I've gotten confident in my bubble making process.
Right,
So yeah, I'll just take a big deep breath and then go. And And usually I'll let it keep going until the breath is completely gone.
do the
Like
same
kind of
thing.
like the slow breathing out process. It just helps you realize that really we can take in more breath and we can hold that note out longer than we think.
Let's do that a little bit with Alexis. You mind giving us like a C chord and kind of go up to then the D flat and the D, but just kind of give us a chord. So that's a C chord. Why don't we try to do the bubble like,
Let's all do it.
take a breath and then.
Okay.
It's best to do this alone.
It can be kind of messy too.
Yeah, I can't get
It might tickle a
Sorry,
little
can I
bit
get a-
too as you
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah.
Well,
Actually, if it's tickling, that means it's working. If your nose starts to itch and all that kind of stuff,
usually have to hold
it's
my
really.
nose.
Right, it kind of tingles.
To me, the bubbles are the quickest warm up
Very.
because it centers your voice instantly. Like if I'm doing a session and we've been singing or even like leading worship and we know we're going to come back at the end and I can just feel the tension in my throat. I'll just sit there and I do a combination of exercises. There's an exercise called the siren where you just kind of and the goal is to go all the way up into your into the stratosphere, come back down and make it all really even. You're trying not to kind of hit that switch point, that part where you go yeah, you're breaking your voice where you're kind of yodeling that spot, but you just kind of start low and and that exercise kind of helps you, like especially I don't know for a lot of guy singers and maybe for girl singers too, but you have that fear of high notes. What if I hit a high note and I crack? It's like you start to do those and you realize if I can hit that note, which I don't have to ever hit in a song, it's not like I'm gonna lead worship and have to all the way up there. So if I can hit that, then I must be able to hit it while I'm singing. So it kind of takes away some of the mystery and kind of removes a little bit of the fear. And then what I usually do, the quick warm-up that I was talking about, is a combination of that siren with the lip bubbles, and I just kind of go... And I'll do it just like that. I just might... It sounds weird, but for whatever reason, like if my voice is raspy and I start to do that, you'll hear the point come back onto my voice. It's like the high end comes back into my voice. So it's a real good one.
One little trick I try using the bubbles too is if the song that I'm singing that morning, I might do bubbles to it, like sing along doing the bubbles. If it was Hosanna. I know that's weird.
That's great.
And it really helps place the voice where I need it for that particular song.
That's good.
For sure.
it also it helps you to realize if you have tension there.
Yeah.
Because if you've got tension there, then
Yeah.
the breath is going to cut off sooner.
That's right.
So it's good. It's a good exercise.
You guys have traveled with a lot of other great singers. Haven't you found that all good singers warm up? Isn't that just
Very
automatic?
It is.
It's true.
Because I would venture to say that perhaps a lot of singers that sing on worship teams, they don't. This whole warm up thing seems optional, or like, oh yeah, or maybe I will, or that's kind of weird. But have you sung where you didn't warm up and you noticed the difference?
Oh, definitely.
Most
Oh, yes.
definitely.
Yeah.
That and like at Gateway on a Sunday morning, we've got 3 services. So if I don't take the time to warm up that morning, I feel it by the 3rd service. I feel like my voice is done.
Yeah.
Because it just doesn't last as long, because you're not warming up, so you're singing very sloppy, and you're just, it's ruining your voice, honestly.
Yeah.
Do you mind if I share the fact that you actually had an issue with
did.
nodules last year or
I
something,
did.
because you were singing?
What happened is I just was over singing and not warming up. And my voice doctor said, Carrie, you're warming up. And I was like, no, I'm not. He's like, why? This is, if you go out to run, you're not going to go running without stretching.
Right.
And you're not going to, do any kind of sports without stretching. Well, we're, as vocalists, this is our instrument. This is our gift that the Lord's given us. And so these are muscles too. And you have to stretch them out. So what happened is I was over singing and I was straining and I didn't even know. So it was a very, very hard lesson to learn. I couldn't speak for a month.
Oh, wow.
And,
I had the same lesson.
Really?
I actually went. Did you too? Yeah. I was, I guess when you're a singer, you just love to sing and you'll take any opportunity. I was singing way too much. I was kind of like, the voice is meant to be able to sing a lot, but you can overdo it too. And I was overdoing it, definitely. I was taking, it was at a time where I was, kind of just getting into the session world. And so I was taking session after session. I would back them up like, I'll work, 10 to 6 over here, and then I'll do this evening one over here, and then I'll get up the next morning. And after a while, I just wore it out. And so that's one of the things that they suggested. Make sure that you warm up. And, we can talk later about vocal health, which is a total other issue. And I know that for anybody who's leading worship, that's a really big deal. For whatever reason, leading worship can be very intense on the voice, and it can really, you feel like, man, I'm really putting everything out there. I think because it's somewhat the passion and it's emotional. So anytime you get emotional, you feel like a little tension here. So sometimes that can kind of come into play, but we can talk about that later. But it really is, warming up is very essential to making sure that you keep your voice healthy.
Exactly.
Let's talk about the difference between singing solo as a soloist versus singing in a group. Because there's a lot of issues that come into play when you're singing with a group, like vibrato and blend and phrasing and just a lot of issues that come up once you start trying to sing with one voice. So, in fact, I love the scripture, 2 Chronicles, okay? 2 Chronicles chapter 5. Just great. It talks about putting together the singers and the musicians. And it says, the trumpeters and singers joined in unison as with one voice to give praise and thanks to the Lord. So I just love that as a goal for us as singers and worship teams, is to sing as with one voice, not having 4, lead singers all kind of interpreting the song their way. But it's like somehow getting all the singers to conform to sound as if just one voice. So, you guys do sessions all the time. Michael, you arrange a lot. I mean, how do you get out of that solo singer mentality into more of a group mentality?
I think just kind of like what we have been discussing, it all starts with humility. Humility is that thing that makes for good blend, because it means that I know how my voice sounds, and I know how your voice sounds in your voice, but I'm going to take a back seat in a way. Like if I'm singing on the worship team and I'm not the worship leader, then I'm gonna tone down a little bit. And what I mean by that is like your tone is basically the sound of your voice, the natural talent that God has given you. When you go to sing something, this is what you sound like. Well, when you're in a worship team, a lot of times you blend it. And what I mean by blending is adding some air to the tone. Like if we were to do a song like All the Earth Will Sing Your Praises or something like that, where you're like, if I were to sing my background part, which is, like, let's just sing it and I'll sing the background part and I'll sing it like full on, my voice, no blending whatsoever. Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4.
You lived, you died, you said in 3 days you would rise, you did. You're alive. Can anybody even hear Paul? I don't think so. Okay. Okay. So, but it's angry worship there. But the demonstration there is just to kind of show you that there's a difference between how I sing as a background vocalist and how, if I was leading the song, I'd want to give it my full-on voice so that it's leading other people. But if there's 4 leaders, you're going to end up with a lot of distraction. And it's kind of like we're making a soup here or something like that, and we're all different spices. We've all got different, sounds to our voices. But if you use it too much, if I use my voice too much, or Nerva uses her voice too much, or Carrie, we end up sounding like we're fighting each other, and there's no unity there. So that's what I'm talking about, humility. It's like, okay, the most important thing isn't that I get heard, but that we blend so that it provides a place for, the plumber in the 17th row who just really wants to worship the Lord. If he's going to be competing with us, he's not going to worship the Lord. He's going to sit and watch. And we don't want that. It's, worship is all about engagement. You want people to come and worship with you. So it's really about toning down a little bit, adding air to the tone. So, like, do the same thing again, and I'll put...
1, 2, 3, 4.
You lived, you died, you said in 3 days you would rise. You did, you're alive. Now, I'm adding lots of air to the tones so that I make sure that my voice sounds like, I'm trying to make my voice sound a little bit like Paul's, his interpretation, where he puts his breaths, all of that kind of, and I kind of even watch him to see where he's forming his vowel sounds and consonants and stuff, so that I'm keeping up with him. And that's one of the ways that it just creates for a blend. You're not noticing my voice over Paul's now, you're just noticing, you wouldn't be able to pick out the parts unless you were really good at doing that.
That's good. My wife would always tell the background vocalist, she'd say, okay, you have one eye on the Lord, one eye on the leader's lips.
Yeah, that's right.
Because it would always drive her nuts when, like, the group would come in, like, a couple seconds after the leader would be there. And she'd be like, you kind of sense as soon as he takes that breath to sing that note, then it's like, you live, you die, and you guys were there. And so it does sound like even that millisecond, can make a difference. What about blend? Let's just talk about blend. There are times maybe where it's just a free-for-all, but most of the time we are trying to blend. And usually you have like pointed, some people have, I've heard, like kind of a pointed voice where it's real just naturally like, all tone.
Right.
If tone was a 10 and breath was like a 0, where it's like, you lived, you died, you lived. So somewhere in between. Is that what you're saying? Kind of dialing in, okay, maybe a 7, or maybe we'll dial it back.
The biggest thing about blending is becoming one with your neighbor. I have to listen to Nerva and with this spirit of humility come into how she's singing it and try to match her, and she's going to do the same for me. So it's not like your best vocalist comes in and says, well, everyone's just going to match me today.